What if the strongest force that could ever control your life wasn't violence, wasn't money, wasn't power, but something far more invisible, far more intimate? Imagine waking up one day realizing that every choice you've made in the past year was never fully yours. That your desires, your priorities, even your very sense of identity had been quietly reprogrammed, not by technology, not by a machine, but by the delicate hand of a woman who knew exactly how to pull the strings of your brain. This is not about love. This is not about romance. This is about power. Power exercised in the shadows, hidden in gestures so subtle that you never stop to question them. Tonight, you will step into a world most men never dare to face. A world where female manipulation reshapes the male brain without him knowing. And the terrifying truth is, it may already be happening to you. At first, it begins innocently. A glance that lingers half a second too long. A touch on the arm that feels like nothing, but sparks a strange warmth in your chest. A laugh at your joke, even when it wasn't that funny. Your brain releases dopamine, a shot of pleasure, a microdose of reward. You think it's just attraction, but she knows. She knows that those tiny reinforcements are planting seeds, seeds that will grow into patterns. Patterns that she will control. Meet Ethan, a man like millions of others. Confident, independent, proud of the life he's built. He meets her in what seems like pure chance. She shines, her presence disarming, her words tailored to his ego, like a mirror reflecting the version of himself he craves to be. In that moment, Ethan doesn't fall in love. He falls into conditioning. Without realizing it, he begins to crave her validation, the way an addict craves his next hit. Here is where the rewiring begins. The human brain is designed to adapt, to learn, to bind itself to patterns of reward and punishment. And she uses that design like a master sculptor carving stone. When Ethan texts her and she responds quickly, warmth floods his system. When she delays, when she pulls back, when she lets silence stretch like a blade across his chest, his mind spins. Did I do something wrong? Is she losing interest? The anxiety bites deeper than logic. His brain releases cortisol, the chemical of stress. And then, just as he's about to crumble, she returns with sweetness, with affection, with the flood of oxytocin that feels like home. What is this dynamic? It is intermittent reinforcement, the most powerful conditioning mechanism known to psychology. The same one that keeps gamblers chained to slot machines, unable to walk away. So Ethan adapts. He begins to adjust his behavior, unconsciously calibrating himself to win her approval, to avoid her withdrawal. He changes his schedule. He sacrifices the gym to see her. He skips time with friends. Slowly, piece by piece, his independent identity erodes. And with each sacrifice, his neural pathways lock tighter around her. The man who once made decisions from a place of confidence now orbits her gravitational pull. Ask yourself, how many times have you seen a man abandon his passions, his discipline, his goals the moment a woman enters his life? How many times have you told yourself, that won't be me, only to catch your reflection years later and realize you became exactly that man? This isn't weakness. It's programming. The brain is not built to resist constant microdoses of reward and punishment. And yet the price for failing to resist is devastating. Because the deeper the conditioning, the less you recognize yourself. Ethan laughs at jokes he never found funny. He defends opinions he doesn't believe in. He shapes his entire worldview around hers, not because she demanded it outright, but because his brain has been rewired to believe that her approval equals survival. This is not love. This is captivity dressed in affection. And here is the brutal question. How would you even know if this was happening to you right now? How can a man detect manipulation when the very organ he needs to analyze it has already been hijacked? The tragedy is that most never do. They drift into years of compromise, of silent resentment, of hollow existence, only to wake up one day shattered, broken, wondering when exactly they lost themselves. But the story of Ethan does not end there, because there comes a moment for every man under this spell when something slips. A friend confronts him. A career opportunity is missed. A mirror shows him a stranger's face, and the cognitive dissonance cracks the illusion. That is the moment of awakening. Rare, painful, and often too late. Yet it is the only path back to freedom. The science is cold. The reality is brutal. But you need to hear it. Female manipulation works not because women are inherently sinister, but because evolution armed them with tools of influence that most men remain blind to. Emotional calibration. Strategic silence. The ability to nurture and punish with the same gentle hand. It is not magic. It is psychology weaponized. And the man who refuses to see it, who insists he is immune, is the man most at risk. Because arrogance is the perfect soil for manipulation to take root. Now pause for a second. If you've felt even a flicker of recognition in this story, if you've seen shadows of yourself in Ethan's downfall, then stop pretending you're above it. Comment below. Admit it. Confront it. Because the first step to escaping manipulation is naming it. But ask yourself, will you be the man who rewrites his own mind, or the man who lets another rewrite it for him? That choice will define you more than anything else in your life. This is only the beginning, because what Ethan will discover next is darker, sharper, and more dangerous than anything he's faced yet. The second half of his journey will reveal the ultimate cost of surrendering his mind to another's control. And whether you like it or not, you are walking the same path. The only question left is, will you notice in time? The deeper Ethan falls into her orbit, the more invisible the chains become. At first, he believes he's choosing her. He tells himself he's making sacrifices for love, for partnership, for something bigger than himself. But what he doesn't realize is that every compromise, every silence, every little shift in behavior is another neural circuit being rewired. A man is most enslaved when he believes he is free. That is the sinister beauty of manipulation. It convinces you that the cage is your own idea. Watch him at dinner. She makes an offhand comment about how immature his friends are. He laughs it off, but deep down, something changes. The next time his friends invite him out, he hesitates. He tells himself he's just tired, or that he's growing out of that phase. In reality, a single suggestion has redirected his entire pattern of social life. And here's the terrifying truth. His brain will rationalize it. He will defend it. He will even swear that it was his own decision. That's how powerful this reprogramming is. This is not just emotional. This is biological. When she rewards him with affection, his brain surges with dopamine. When she withdraws, his system collapses into cortisol. The push and pull creates a chemical loop, a cycle indistinguishable from addiction. And like any addict, he begins to chase the next high. He needs her laughter. He craves her touch. He fears her absence. Until he's not a man making choices, he's a man chasing chemicals, enslaved by his own biology. Ask yourself, how many times have you justified someone else's control as your own decision? How many times have you said, I wanted to, when deep down you knew you were bending under pressure, under fear, under the subtle threat of losing affection? The human brain cannot tell the difference between love and control when the mechanism is this precise. That is why it works so devastatingly well. Now, let's strip away the romantic illusions. This is not about one woman and one man. This is about strategy. Manipulation follows a predictable pattern. Step 1, hook with charm. Step 2, destabilize with withdrawal. Step 3, reward with intimacy. Step 4, demand compliance, not openly, but through suggestion, through insinuation, through the weapon of silence. Repeat until the man's sense of self dissolves. This is the invisible algorithm running behind so many modern relationships, and most men never see it until it's too late. But there is something darker here. Because as Ethan bends more, as his brain reshapes itself around her approval, he begins to lose the core of his masculine drive. His ambition weakens. His hunger dulls. The fire that once drove him to build, to conquer, to grow, flickers into a fragile flame. This is not coincidence. This is the consequence of manipulation, the transformation of a man into a compliant, subdued version of himself, a man without edges, a man who has traded strength for safety. And here is where you must face the brutal truth. If you are not aware of this process, if you do not train yourself to detect it, it will happen to you. Not because you are weak, but because you are human. Your brain is programmable. Your emotions are hackable. Your chemistry can be hijacked. And if you walk through life blind to that fact, you will end up like Ethan, lost in the fog of someone else's control. So what is the way out? First, awareness. The ability to name the pattern when it appears. When she withholds affection, recognize the game. When she praises you, see the dopamine hit for what it is. Step outside of the loop and observe it. Second, boundaries. Draw them, defend them, refuse to betray them even for affection. Because a boundary surrendered once will always be surrendered again. Third, identity. Reclaim it. Your hobbies, your passions, your goals must never bend to her influence. The moment they do, you've given her the keys to your nervous system. Pause here. If this message cuts deep, if it stings because it feels true, then do something right now. Hit the like button. Drop a comment. Not for me, but for yourself. Because every action you take to confront this truth reinforces your awareness. It rewires your brain back toward freedom. And remember this. You will either be the man who controls his own mind, or the man who lets someone else control it. There is no middle ground. You cannot serve two masters. The one you serve is the one who shapes your brain. But Ethan's story is far from over. Because when he begins to sense the truth, when the fog starts to clear, he faces a decision far more dangerous than the manipulation itself. To stay and live as a shadow of himself, or to break free and pay the brutal price of reclaiming his mind. That moment is coming, and it will change everything. The breaking point always comes silently. Ethan is sitting in his car after another night of compromise. She had criticized the way he spoke to the waiter. Just a small comment. Just a little jab. But something inside him cracks. He stares at the steering wheel and realizes he no longer recognizes the man whose hands are gripping it. The fire in his chest is gone. The hunger in his eyes is gone. What remains is compliance, trained obedience disguised as devotion. And in that silence, a question burns through his mind like a blade. Who am I now? This is the moment most men never reach, because the pain of awakening is almost unbearable. To admit that you've been manipulated is to admit that you are never in control. It destroys your ego. It humiliates the identity you built. But it is also the only door to freedom. Ethan sits in that car, torn between denial and clarity. Denial whispers, just accept it, just go back. It's not so bad. Clarity roars, if you don't wake up now, you will be hers forever. Manipulation is not just about control. It's about theft. It steals your time, your energy, your purpose. It drains the essence of your masculinity drop by drop until you are nothing but an echo of who you once were. That is why the cost of silence is so high. You don't just lose her respect. You lose your own. And once a man loses respect for himself, he is no longer a man. He is a shell. Think about your own life. Have you ever stayed silent when you should have spoken? Have you ever swallowed your truth just to keep her happy? Have you ever sacrificed something vital, your dream, your brotherhood, your discipline, just to avoid her disapproval? If you have, then you already know the chains Ethan feels. You already know the prison of invisible control. The only question is, are you willing to admit it? Ethan begins to test the edges of his cage. He declines one of her suggestions. Nothing major, just a small refusal. Her reaction is swift. The warmth fades. The approval vanishes. The silence is sharp and cold. He feels the withdrawal in his body like a physical wound. His chest tightens. His thoughts spiral. This is the grip of conditioning. It doesn't just shape your behavior. It punishes you when you resist. And most men, terrified of that punishment, collapse back into compliance. But here is the paradox. The pain of resistance is the only path to freedom. To endure the silence, to endure the loss of approval, to endure the withdrawal symptoms like an addict detoxing from a drug, that is the price of breaking free. And most men are too weak to pay it. You, right now, what would you do? Would you take the pain? Would you embrace the storm knowing it might break you, but it might also save you? Or would you fold back into comfort, choosing slavery over suffering? That choice is not abstract. That choice defines your entire future. The world will not tell you this. Society will not tell you this. They will say love requires compromise. They will say real men sacrifice. They will glorify submission disguised as devotion. But the truth is harsher. Real love never demands you amputate your identity. Real respect never requires you to erase yourself. If she must break you to keep you, then she doesn't love you. She owns you. Ethan begins to see it now. The fog lifts, and he realizes that the affection he thought was unconditional was always conditional. The intimacy he thought was real was always transactional. He realizes that the cage was built not of steel, but of his own fear. And once he sees it, he cannot unsee it. But the question remains, what will he do? Will he confront her, risking the collapse of everything he built with her? Or will he bury the truth and continue the performance, hoping the pain will fade? This is the crossroads every manipulated man must face. To reclaim yourself is to risk everything. To stay is to lose yourself forever. And you, listening to this, you will face it too. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but one day you will look into the mirror and see a stranger staring back at you. That moment will demand an answer. Will you be the man who chooses himself, or the man who dies for her approval? The story of Ethan is not just his story. It is the story of every man who has surrendered his mind without realizing it. The details change, but the mechanism is always the same. And unless you awaken, unless you sharpen your vision, you are already walking his path. The only difference is whether you recognize it before it's too late. So I ask you now, when the moment comes, when the silence feels unbearable, when the fear claws at your chest, who will you be? The man who breaks, or the man who breaks free? Ethan makes his choice. He knows the cost. He knows the storm it will unleash. And yet, somewhere buried beneath the years of conditioning, a spark of the old fire still burns. The decision is not loud. It is not cinematic. It is quiet, almost invisible, but it shifts everything. He chooses himself. He chooses to endure the withdrawal, to stand tall as the affection fades, to face the monster of his own dependency. And in that moment, the chains begin to loosen. But freedom is never immediate. The first nights alone are brutal. His mind torments him with memories of her smile, her touch, her voice. His body aches for the dopamine rush of her validation. He questions himself, wonders if he made a mistake, wonders if maybe it was all in his head. That's the trap. Manipulation doesn't just imprison you while you re-inside it. It haunts you long after you leave. The ghost of her influence lingers like poison in his bloodstream. This is why so many men crawl back. They mistake the pain of withdrawal for proof of love. They confuse suffering with passion. They convince themselves that slavery was safer than freedom. But Ethan doesn't go back. He suffers. He bleeds. He lets the chemicals burn themselves out. And with each passing day, he regains a fragment of himself. This is the hidden truth about male transformation. It doesn't happen in comfort. It doesn't happen when life is easy. It happens in the fire, in the nights where you shake with doubt, in the mornings where you feel hollow, in the moments when you want to crawl back to the very chains you broke. That is where the real man is forged. And you need to ask yourself, what kind of man are you? Are you the one who returns to the cage, who justifies his obedience, who buries his own hunger for the comfort of approval? Or are you the one who takes the pain, who walks through fire, who lets the suffering sharpen him into steel? The difference between those two men is the difference between living as a shadow and living as a force. Weeks pass, and Ethan feels something strange. His thoughts are clearer. His energy returns. He picks up the hobbies he abandoned. He calls the friends he ghosted. He starts to feel ambition again, the hunger that once defined him. It is as if someone turned the lights back on in a house he thought was condemned. That's when he realizes the full cost of the manipulation. It didn't just steal his time. It stole his very masculinity. And only by tearing himself free did he reclaim it. The lesson is merciless, but undeniable. Manipulation is not just a tactic. It is a war for your mind. And if you are not aware, if you are not vigilant, you will lose that war before you even know you are in it. Ethan's story is proof. Proof that no matter how strong, how independent, how disciplined you think you are, you can be programmed. You can be bent. You can be broken. Unless you decide otherwise. Now think about your life. Look at your past. How many decisions were really yours? How many of your habits, your beliefs, your values were shaped by subtle influence? How many times did you bend, thinking you were strong? These are not abstract questions. They cut to the core of who you are. And the answers will either set you free or reveal your chains. But here's the dangerous part. Manipulation doesn't just come from women. It comes from culture, from media, from systems designed to weaken you, to make you compliant, to strip you of your power. Her manipulation is just the most intimate form of a global pattern. Everywhere you turn, someone is trying to rewire your brain. The question is not if it's happening. The question is, are you aware enough to see it? So here is the choice that defines you. You can be like Ethan at the beginning, confident but blind, strong but unguarded, slowly sinking into invisible control. Or you can be like Ethan at the end, scarred, shaken but free. Which man will you be? As this story closes, the question does not disappear. It sharpens. Because the next time someone smiles at you, the next time someone withholds affection, the next time someone tries to bend your identity with subtle pressure, you will feel it, you will see it, and you will remember these words. The only question left is this. Will you be the man who owns his mind, or the man who lets someone else own it for him? Your answer begins now. There is a silence after awakening. A silence men are not prepared for. When the manipulation ends, when the strings are cut, you don't suddenly feel triumphant. You feel empty. You feel the void that was once filled with her attention, her validation, her control. That void is terrifying. And this is where most men fail. They rush to fill it again, with another woman, with distraction, with noise. They run from the silence. But the silence is where the transformation begins. Ethan sits in that silence. At first, it feels unbearable. Every instinct screams at him to chase comfort, to find someone, anyone, who can soothe the ache. But he resists. He chooses to face the void. And in that choice, he discovers something profound. The silence is not emptiness. The silence is space. Space for his own voice to return. Space for his own identity to rise. Space for his own masculine drive to roar back to life. Men have been trained to fear solitude. But solitude is the forge. It is where you hear your thoughts unfiltered, where you face your fears without distraction, where you confront the uncomfortable truths about yourself. And for the first time in years, Ethan faces himself. He sees the lies he told to justify her control. He sees the weakness that let it happen. He sees the parts of himself he abandoned. It is brutal, but it is also liberating. Because once you see the truth, you cannot unsee it. Here is the paradox. Manipulation rewires your brain without you knowing. But once you awaken, once you break free, you can rewire it yourself. You can build new patterns, new habits, new standards. You can program yourself with discipline, with strength, with clarity. The same brain that was enslaved can become your weapon. The same biology that trapped you can be turned into your engine, but only if you take responsibility. Only if you stop blaming her, stop blaming the world, and start building yourself. Ask yourself right now, what are you filling your mind with? What habits are rewiring your brain every day? Who do you allow to influence you, to shape your thoughts, to direct your emotions? Because whether you see it or not, your brain is being programmed every single moment. The only question is, are you the one holding the code? This is where the transformation becomes dangerous. Because a man who owns his mind cannot be manipulated. He cannot be controlled. He cannot be bent by approval or broken by silence. He is immune to the games, and such a man is a threat to women who seek to control, to a society that seeks to pacify, to a system that thrives on weak men. That is why most will never walk this path. It is easier to stay asleep, easier to live in chains, easier to call slavery love and weakness devotion. But you are hearing this for a reason. Something inside you is restless. Something inside you knows you were meant for more than quiet obedience. You know it. That is why you cannot stop listening. That is why these words cut deep. Because they are not just about Ethan. They are about you. And now the final challenge stands before you. Will you step into the silence? Will you let it burn away your illusions? Will you rebuild yourself from the ground up? Or will you run back to the comfort of the cage? That is your decision. No one can make it for you. But understand this. A man who chooses freedom is reborn. His fire returns. His strength multiplies. His eyes sharpen with clarity. He becomes untouchable, unstoppable, undeniable. He is no longer the puppet. He is the master of his own mind. So choose. Will you continue to live as the man who bends, who hides, who erases himself for scraps of affection? Or will you rise as the man who stands unshakable, who commands his own destiny, who refuses to be rewritten by anyone but himself? The world is waiting to see your answer, and the silence is waiting to hear it. Then comes the moment every man dreads but must face, the confrontation with reality itself. Ethan looks back at the years he spent under her influence and realizes something haunting. It wasn't just her. It was him. He allowed it. He permitted the erosion of his boundaries. He traded his soul for approval. That truth is like fire in his chest, burning, scarring, but also purifying. Because once a man admits his complicity, he becomes unstoppable. He understands that he can never allow it to happen again. Here lies the true transformation. Most men escape manipulation, but never evolve. They break free physically, yet remain prisoners mentally. They carry bitterness, resentment, and fear into the next chapter of their lives. They distrust women. They distrust themselves. But Ethan chooses differently. He refuses to let manipulation be the final author of his story. He chooses to rise from it, to use the pain as fuel, to turn the scars into armor. This is the essence of masculine rebirth. It is not found in avoiding women. It is not found in hatred or withdrawal. It is found in mastery, mastery of self, mastery of discipline, mastery of desire. When a man masters these, he becomes immune. Manipulation bounces off him like arrows off steel. Approval no longer intoxicates him. Silence no longer terrifies him. He does not chase. He does not beg. He does not bend. He stands. And here is the lesson you cannot ignore. Female manipulation only works on men who lack a mission. It only thrives where purpose is absent. When your life revolves around her, she owns you. But when your life revolves around a vision greater than yourself, her influence collapses. You cannot be rewired because your brain is already locked on to a higher frequency. Your ambition, your craft, your discipline, these are the shields against her games. Ask yourself this with ruthless honesty. What is your mission? Do you even have one? Or have you drifted through life chasing attention, chasing comfort, chasing scraps of validation? If you do not know your mission, then you are already vulnerable. Because a man without direction is the easiest to manipulate. He will bend to anything that offers him meaning, even if it chains him. Ethan learns this truth the hard way. But once he does, his world changes. He pours himself into building again, into training his body, sharpening his mind, cultivating his craft. The dopamine that once came from her texts now comes from progress. The oxytocin that once came from her touch now comes from brotherhood, from camaraderie, from bonds with men who walk the same path. And the purpose that once seemed lost is reborn with more fire than ever. This is the path every man must walk if he is to rise above manipulation. Not withdrawal, not bitterness, but mission, purpose, a fire so strong that no woman, no culture, no system can extinguish it. That is freedom. That is power. And here's the final question that lingers, the question that cuts to the bone. Will you waste your life as the man who drifts, who bends, who allows others to rewrite his mind? Or will you carve yourself into the man who cannot be manipulated, who cannot be bent, who lives and dies by his own code? Ethan chose. And now, so must you. Because in the end, the brain will always be rewired. The only question is, by whom? Will it be by her hands, subtle and unseen, or by your own, forged in fire and discipline? That is the choice. That is the line drawn in blood. And now you stand before it. Will you cross?